bit too. Hello. So it's Friday and it's general discussion. So about topics of interest related to the subject we have studied this week. So I have 3 questions. And let me start with one of them. Okay, this is more conceptual, which is connected to our last discussion about desertification and the model. So the question is, how was determined the proportionality to u square in the equations? Okay, so let us go back to the equations. So what we had as an equation for water content in soil, A minus B W minus C U square W, and du dt was minus d W plus E U square W. Okay? So the question is essentially, why is there a U square here? And why didn't we do the things with U, just as we done with predator-prey and competition models, where we have used linear functions? Okay, so you have here a square. So this comes from laboratory experiments. Okay, so this is connected to what? Water in soil, which is uptaken by plants. Okay, so you can do this. There's people from soil science and from agriculture and so on, that's very interesting and important for them. So you can do this kind of experiment in the lab or in a small controlled field. Okay, so you can do the experiment and and then you can fit the data to see what's the dependence on the biomass. Okay. So the dependence turns out to be squared. Okay? So it's an experimental fact. Okay? So somebody wanted to say? No. So there's a second part and a third part. I will read the third part. All the constants in the equation determined experimentally. Okay? So A is the rainfall. Okay, you can put a measurement of rainfall. Okay. B is evaporation. Okay, it will depend on the temperature and so on, but in principle, you can have evaporation curves for soil with water. Okay, under certain humidity and a certain temperature, right, can be determined. Okay? Now, this is connected to the death rate of the vegetation, of the biomass. Okay? It is G is something which has which has dimensions of 1 over time, therefore 1 over d has dimensions of time. So that's the typical time it takes to decay. If you only look at this here, without this, say you don't have this term here, you don't have water at all, okay? So then you would have du dt is equal to minus du, which implies that u is proportional to e to minus dt. Okay, so 1 over d is the time scale. So this gives you the exponential decay, and this calibrates how fast it goes. Okay, so it gives you the time scale. If you don't have water, in the absence of water, in this case, okay, it gives you the time scale of decay of biomass when under stress. Okay. Okay, so the next, okay, I always take the wrong one. Next part of the question is how to choose the best transformations for the variables in a system of differential equations. So this is a very general thing, but I understand that this makes reference to the scaling of the variables here, but because transformation of variables can be many other things, okay? Yeah, you can see introduce new variables that are say W, introduce a new variable that's function of W, okay, so on. But no, I think I understand that the question is about the transformations that we made. So I will do the calculation in full, okay? And how you get to this, okay? You have the equations. Now, you have three possible rescalings, which is water content, vegetation biomass, and time. So I will write down that capital W is alpha times small one. Capital U will be beta times U. Capital T is gamma times U. T. What are alpha, beta, and gamma? Constants, okay? Just multiplying your variables by constants. It's the same as when you change variables. Change, for instance, change units. Instead of saying 1 meter, okay? I can say 100 centimeters. So it's just a multiplication of, okay? So, good. That's it. So, now we take this and substitute in the equations. Okay, so how do you do this? Let's start with the first equation. W is capital W divided by alpha. Okay, so this will be 1 over alpha d capital dt. But dt, t is capital T divided by gamma. So capital D divided by gamma gives you a capital T here, divided by gamma, but I will write the gamma here because it's 1 over gamma here, so it goes here. Okay? Equal to A minus B 1 over alpha W, capital W, minus C. Then there is U squared, which gives you 1 over beta squared and 1 over alpha, capital U squared, water. Yes? Okay? Now, I have alpha here, here, and here. I can multiply everything by alpha, and I can divide everything by gamma. Okay? So I multiply by alpha and divide by gamma in order to have this form here. Will give you A times alpha divided by gamma minus the alpha has been eliminated, B over gamma W minus C 1 over beta squared, alpha is cancelled, and 1 over gamma. U squared. Okay. Now, alpha, beta, and gamma are absolutely arbitrary. Okay. So I can choose them for convenience. So I want to have 5 terms, and I would like to have at least 3 terms with coefficient 1. Okay, could be 2 or 3. I mean, with coefficient 1, without any parameter in front of the term. So I can choose which ones I want. Okay, so I can choose here, for instance. What I will do is take gamma to be equal to b. Okay, therefore you will get a 1 here. Okay, and I also want all these things here to be equal to 1. So I will have c divided by gamma, but gamma is already b. Okay. 1 over beta squared equal to 1. And now I can calculate beta. Okay? So beta will be square root of c over b. Okay? And if I do this, well, everybody has taken note of this. So this one becomes 1, this one is 1, and then this remains. Okay? So I have GW, capital 1, GG is equal to A times alpha divided by gamma. Gamma is B. Okay? Minus capital gamma, minus. Yeah. Okay? That's the first equation. Now I'll do the same procedure for the second equation. Okay? And what does it mean? So, okay, sometimes look at the definition here. Gamma. It is multiplying t. Okay? And I use gamma equal to b. B is this term. And the dimensions of b is 1 over time. Okay? So capital T is a non-dimensional time, which means that I'm referring the time to the time scale of B. Okay? Yeah. So the second equation will be du dt, which will give you 1 over beta du dt times gamma. But gamma, let gamma be here. No. No, okay, gamma we already have, sorry. Gamma is b, okay? Will be equal to minus d capital U divided by beta plus E times 1 over beta squared times alpha. Okay? I can do the same procedure. I can multiply by b and divide by beta and divide by b. Okay? So gu dt, capital T. The beta is just the effect of cancelling this and this going here. So, yeah? Okay? And divide by b. Okay? So I will get minus d over b times u plus E times 1 over alpha, okay, divided by 1 over b times beta. And beta is square root of c over b. Okay? Now, I want this to be 1. Therefore, I have alpha has to be equal to E over, I will write it in this way. I would put this inside, okay? And then you get B times C. Okay? Is it correct? B times gamma was B, okay? And beta was C over B. Yeah, it's correct. Okay, so you got alpha. Okay. So you have two remaining terms. You have this one, and you have this one. Here, But now you know alpha and gamma. You can substitute everything's determined. So this have two terms, which I called A, and this one I called B. Okay? And this gives you the equations. Okay, the last equation will be the UT equal to minus B U plus, and here you call of is this A, and then these are the equations that we have studied. Okay, is that okay now? So it's always, not only in this case, always you can do this. Sometimes I just write this expression of the scaling here. Why? Because I don't want to spend so much time doing this calculation. It's completely mechanical. Okay? You just have to count how many parameters you have and how many rescalings you can have. And it means that you have 10 parameters, I have 4 rescalings, I can eliminate 4 and get only an equation with 6. Here we had 5, 3 rescaling, now we have 2 parameters. Okay? Which means that the dynamics, the qualitative dynamics, the fixed points, the stability, everything, does not depend on a 5 parameter space of variables. Okay? So you have 5 variables or parameters. You have 5 parameters, but what matters is only this combination and this combination. It's only the certain combinations of parameters that will give you all the qualitative dynamics that you want. Okay? You don't need to explore a higher order, higher dimensional parameter space. I mean, parameter space here is just A and B. It's 2-dimensional, okay? Which is much easier to explore. And even we took still a more simple case, okay? But because usually one parameter is the easiest, okay? So what I did when I say it's to explore, when you do this qualitative analysis, for instance, I have done the bifurcation diagram, hysteresis, and so on. When I say explore is, there are regions of parameter space, of this reduces parameter space A and B, okay, where the behavior will be of a certain kind. Say, the only fixed point is 0, biomass, it's a desert. And there are other regions of this parameter space where we will have vegetation cover, okay, and maybe, or you have a region where you have bistability, where you can have both depending on the initial condition, and in general you have this. You can take usually people. I won't draw it for this system, but usually if parameters say they are positive, you can draw regions like this. Say here stable, unstable, cycles, whatever. Okay, so this gives you the qualitative dynamics. But in order to do this in a consistent way, you should have as many parameters as possible. Okay? Because it's only the combination of the parameter that matters to determine the regions of stability and instability. Okay, so that you can do for any sort of systems that we have wrote here. Actually, in competition, wrote Volterra-like competition, we did the same. Okay? I didn't do this passage because I think it's a little bit of loss of time sometimes to go, and it's much easier to say, okay, I do this with this transformation, I get this equation because it's completely mechanical. Okay, it's just algebra. Okay? So, okay. Any comment on this? I will go to the next question. So when does richness and diversity come into the alternative stability systems? I ask because you mentioned the efforts in Sahel. But there also is the case of China, where they also planted millions of trees, which were all from the same species and then failed spectacularly. How, had they included diversity, could there be success? How do you incorporate this into you? Okay, very complicated question, but first, okay. There's a debate about interplay between stability in systems and what people call diversity. But, well, what would be diversity for us first? Okay, diversity would be number of species, of different species. Okay, you have lots of species. Okay? So there's an hypothesis that having lots of species should be more stable than having just one. And this example from China would be a typical example. But pay attention, it's an artificial system. Okay? And the idea is, for instance, that if there's a pathogen and you have all the individuals of the same species, all of them can catch the same pathogen and so on, so on. If you have diversity, I mean, I'm talking about trees, for instance, okay? But this could be extended to other interactions. You get one with pathogens, but the other one doesn't turn and it gets not infected, and it stays local and doesn't spread for all system and doesn't collapse. So that's a fairly good point, that more species could mean more stability. In agriculture, you have do these kinds of things, because in agriculture you have these monocultures and so on. Then you have the pests. You know, everybody knows that pests can go in and kill the whole culture because no diversity. So what do you do? Well, usually people just throw pesticides. But the other thing that you can do is have predators that prey upon the insects or the species that damage your plantation. Okay, so okay, then there's obviously a problem that usually, I mean, if it happened to be a monoculture and they have this, for instance, this parasite of plants that can destroy the plant or can infect with a pathogen, okay. Then, well, if you go, if this happens, then you have established a certain situation, okay, and the natural enemies have not been introduced, and I mean, or they are just not there. Okay, so what do you do? Well, you then try to introduce natural enemies, and this has been done in many cases. Some of them successfully, and some of them not. What happens a lot is that the natural enemy sometimes can't get established on that environment, because natural enemy may not be a specialist on the parasite you are trying to kill. Okay, so it doesn't get established. You know, what you have to do, you have to artificially put him. Okay, because he needs other resources that you can't find there. Okay, so that's a way. Okay, and sometimes you don't use only the natural enemy. You use other techniques. You introduce the same species, but with sterile males, and and they kind of have when they will make the non-sterile males diluted in a larger population, okay, and females can't distinguish, and therefore you can diminish the rate of increase of the population, okay. So that's one day. Well, but now that's for agriculture, and that's a way that costs a lot. Okay? You have to go on and do this introduction of the prey, and it's always or the same with the sterile male technique or genetically modified individuals, for instance. Okay, so but well, the sterile male obviously is not sustainable. Okay, because they don't have descendants. Okay, so you have to just go on and put in the sterile males, and maybe you can get to the extinction of the population, but it's invasion prone without with the sterile males. Then the other thing was introducing natural enemy, which has always some kind of danger, okay? Because the natural enemy can be a threat to other species. Okay? There's the famous case of I don't know, there's this coffee plantations in Caribbean. I think I remember it's Cuba, Haiti. Well, where there was a problem with the coffee plantations, and I mean there was not a very strong problem with coffee plantations, and the same kind of coffee in Australia had a lot of pathogens and parasites. And one thing is there was a kind of toad, sapo, and that controlled the species in Caribbean thing, so they took them to Australia. And it's an invasive species in Australia, and it's sweeping all the northern part of Australia. I mean, where there's water, where the other part is desert, but and it's created a biological invasion of the throat. Okay, so that's this is one of the things, but this is still not diversity. So one thing that people try also in the case of agriculture is to have, if you have your field, and then in the middle you put you create a kind of community of plants and insects with a lot of different species, which including species that can control your focal parasite, the one that attacks your plantations. So this is the idea that having this diversity would be much more stable than just putting one predator, which would be a system of parasite and its enemy. Okay? So having more insects, and in order to have more insects, you need a certain diversity of plants that can sustain that. So you can put an area of your field where you introduce this engineered ecosystem in the middle, and you try to see if this will not collapse, and if this can help to maintain population of your natural enemy. So these are sometimes this is research. In practice, I have been a lot in contact with people from agriculture, from the Piracicaba, and usually entomologists and so on work with that. And well, there's a lot of empiricism. Okay, this works, this doesn't work, and so on. It's not much theory, but it's an instance of the stability, diversity aspect. But now, There's this book, Stability and Complexity in Model Ecosystems, okay, by Robert May, which created a lot of buzz. Because May, which is a very important person, I mean, he's even Lord in England, but actually he was a physicist initially. And yeah, there are lots of people that were physicists in ecology. It's curious. And May came with the second, he made kind of simulations of large numbers of species, okay, interacting pairwise, but with an interaction strength random between, say, -1 and 1. Okay, can be can be predator-prey, can be mutualism, then competition. Okay, so you have a randomness in this. You put a random hypothetical community, and he showed that for very large communities, the system is not stable. Okay, the large number limit is not stable. Doesn't mean it will collapse to 0. Okay, but it's not stable to have a certain. So this was completely counterintuitive, completely. And the way that has been made is it's something that I have not discussed here, but which is using ideas about community matrices. Community matrices is like you have a fixed point of your system, you do a perturbation, then you get a linear system, as we have done several times here, and then you have a matrix of coefficients, okay, which are the intensity of the interaction between species. Okay, so that, and he made this, and then he defined it, well, the auto interaction, and like I'll say this, carrying capacities, he done non-dimensionalized, so I have a diagonal interactions between the species and itself is equal to 1, and then you go and you randomly choose the other coefficients, randomly. Right? Well, so this is something, well, it's a theoretical result about large ecosystems which have random connections. Now, so this can be criticized and has been, and there's very strong work by Stefano Alesina from Chicago on this kind of system, because this is not emulating a naturalist system. Okay, so works by Alesina. And has several works, and usually what would you try to do? So, say, okay, let me start by saying now this is a network of mutualism. This is a network of competition. This is a network of predator-prey dynamics. Okay, so and then you can do some randomness. I mean, there's still some random choice of parameters, but now they have definite interactions, because May was a mixture of everything. Okay? You could say, okay, mixture of everything, nature's mixture. Okay, it be also. Okay, so Alesina could also be criticized and saying, okay, you are taking communities, they are still in certain communities, which obviously have other connections. Say, typical thing that people study is mutualism. Okay, so you have mutualism, say, with birds, pollinators, which are, think of birds, and certain plants, and so you get the connections and so on, and then you can study the stability of this and how this would the stability increase or not in this kind of system. Okay, but for instance, the system I'm talking about, pollinators and the plants that have flowers, is very particular. It has a structure that birds, for instance, don't have only only connections to flowers, okay, not with other birds. So there is a structure of the network. So then this is the other part of the study where also Alessina has given a lot of contribution. Let's say, okay, now we want to put realistic network structures in the system, okay? So like the one I described, there's an interaction between, there are two kinds of, I mean, there are many species, but there are two different kinds, and on the interact between different kinds. And you can think about this not only for this system, you have, well, mutualism usually has this bipartite things, which people study. I think we will have an advanced class on this by Paulo Guimarães from USP, who is also a specialist on this. And but other systems, you can have predator prey and so on. So the complexity, the stability, complexity, or diversity network, diversity, stability debate, doesn't have a single answer. Will pretty much depend on characteristics of networks that enhance stability or not. Okay, so now are there alternative stable states in this case? Usually I don't think so. Could have, I mean, but usually what you do in this case is you have trophic cascades, for instance. You could have trophic cascades in the sense that, for instance, if you are looking for food webs, then maybe the elimination of a certain, you perturb, say you have a food web, and then you want to know if it's stable if I just take out one of them. And then sometimes, in certain situations, no. It's just take, bye-bye, everything stays as it was. But sometimes you take one, and you get that whole cascades of exclusions, okay? Because that one was kind of keystone in the network, okay? So and this is also study this things is also very important, because you by mapping real systems, trying to see how is the structure of these real systems, and which would be the species that you should never eliminate. Okay, this is if you want to manage the species, then you have to be more or less sure that you want create cascades that can be very important and destabilize your system. Okay, so one thing you could think, let's say we are. What species would we like to eliminate here in the world, but in Brazil? What species would you like to eliminate? I mean, mosquitoes, but mosquitoes in general will be difficult. Yeah, because if you eliminate all the mosquitoes, I think you will have not only will have a crash. Okay, but let's say Aedes aegypti. Okay, this one seems a bad guy. Okay, so the other ones are okay. So you have to be also more or less sure that eliminating Aedes will not create conflict. But I mean, Aedes has been studied a lot and their interactions and so on. And there's a sense that it probably doesn't have pretty much effects. But there's a counterexample. In Africa, back in I think 60s, the other counterexample, which was there's the lake, I think it was Lake Victoria or Tanganyika, I can't remember. I think Lake Victoria, yeah. And well, that's a very poor region, and the lake had fishes, but was not very rich. So why not bring up super species here and introduce them, so there will be a lot of food for everybody. It will be a party. Okay, so they bring some kind of perch. Perches like Portuguese is no? Perca. Yeah. And okay, it's big guy. Okay, So they put it there, and this disturbed the ecosystem to such a point that you get an effect not only on the fish community, but fish community is connected to microbial community, which is connected to soil, and soil is connected to vegetation, so you get a loss of biodiversity in the plant community around the place. Okay? So, and the other species, I don't know if all of them disappear, but some of them at least disappear. So that also gives you the message that, you know, there's no thing like ecological engineering, in the sense that I can do engineering with materials and so on, because I know everything about the materials, and I don't know elasticity, I know solids, I know mechanics, and I do know, and I build a nice a building, and I can even estimate how long it will be okay to 1,000 years, 2,000 years, and so on. I can do everything. It's engineering, but in ecological engineering, it's the problem that you have really something which is a complex system. A complex system had many agents, where all of them, with many interactions, many connections, okay? And usually it's having a complete map of everything that can go on is not viable, okay? Or if you get in some complete communities that can be, for instance, in Antarctica, or have people that in Terra de Fuego have studied communities which are not so large because it's very cold and so on, so on. So it's less number of species is smaller. Even then, it's still a lot of species, and you don't know the interaction strength between species, because you cannot go and it's not a lab. Okay, you can map the species, and you can postulate maybe these interactions are happening, so, but it's not, even if you could get, still trying to do some engineering upon something like that in view of uncertainties that are natural in any field measurements that you have, this prevents you to have ecological engineering, okay? So you can, you can have insights like the one like, okay, if I just go on and have no diversities, and I can have problems with the pathogens and so on, they could have thought of this. It was not very difficult to imagine that there could be a pathogen in China with the plants. But, so you have insights, and in community ecology is about these communities and so on. It's a very interesting subject. But no engineering, okay? Okay, anyone has some comment on this? Some previous work on prediction of Amazon vegetation convergence are heavily criticized, such as the Amazon dieback theory. I don't know what's dieback theory, Dilbert theory. What predictions and insights on this subject you find relevant or trustworthy? Okay, that's a problem, very complicated. Yes, I'm not a climatologist, no. Okay, so I've studied this a little bit, but well, one point which has been heavily debated, but is the existence of tipping points in of vegetation cover in the Amazonian region. Right? So this comes, and so the tipping point is what we studied, the catastrophic transition on a short time scale. Okay, so, in another, you can call it alternative stable states, and then you have a tipping point, or you say it's hysteresis, or you say it's bistability. There are many names for the same thing. Okay, so the tipping point where you would accelerate the savannization of the region and change the whole rainfall regime. So this goes on by, the point is, how is the general mesoscale circulation of the atmosphere and its water content. Okay, so Amazonian region has a very particular thing, which is, I don't know if other tropical forests have the same thing, like the forest in Africa, this more or less at the same latitude, which is that you have a complicated system. So I'm as I said, I'm not say this is Amazonia here, okay, region. What do you have here? You have the Andes. Okay? That's pretty high. Okay? And here you have ocean. Okay? Okay? And here you have Brazil. And so this is a tropical forest. It's a humid tropical forest, and so humid that the regime of rainfall there is not. For instance, take rainfall here in southeast, south or whatever you want in Brazil. Okay, if it rains today, or if it rains in a certain season here, okay. This is not that this rain then will evaporate and fall again in the same place. Okay? It's not convective. It's just the usual cold fronts that come from south, which essentially come from Antarctica, and they come and they meet hotter air, and this creates precipitation. That's what we see here in this region all the time. Okay, so even if you take the weather reports that in the TV or whatever, they will say, "Oh, there is a cold front coming." Okay? So that's how it happens to rain. Okay? So therefore, usually, at a certain large scale, the rainfall is not a local process only, which would be convective. But here you have convection. Okay, so here you have evaporation, which will stay more or less in this region, okay, and then fall again. Okay, and there's also incoming. Okay, there's incoming from would be the tropical region from Atlantic Ocean. And this gets more or less trapped here. Largest part doesn't go on through the Andes. Okay? You know also that after the Andes they have completely different environment. Okay, you have even deserts in Arica and Chile and so on. And so the point is that this convection here, together with this, also creates, it has to go somewhere, okay? So if it doesn't go to Peru here, it will bounce here, and this will bring some humidity to the southern part, or in the southeast part of Brazil, or the south of Brazil, and the central part of Brazil has some humidity due to this. So it has been also debated some 2 decades ago. It's called this flying rivers. Okay, but flying rivers are, I mean, it's a catchy name. Okay, but it's just just circulation of, but the flying rivers and so on. I think at this point, people from meteorology and climatology have come to a point that this exists really. Okay, people from the National Institute of Space Research in Brazil, I think this is not anymore so much debated. Okay, but the point is, now you start to cut the forest here, so this will affect the local circulation. Okay, and well, then there's no simple model. This kind of thing, I was just okay, let's write a simple model. I tried to write a simple model. Actually, I know a little bit of climatology and so on, but no, that's not easy. So the results that have been published is based on global circulation models, or connected to this scale, which is a kind of mesoscale. Okay, and this has shown the results that there's a tipping point, and if you go for this tipping point, above the tipping point, you can go for savanization or desertification, I don't know, okay, quickly. Okay, but this is consistent with the desertification study from the last vegetation cover can have something to do with tipping points. We were in semi-arid region, okay? We were not in the Amazon, okay? But it could be conceivable that the regime change, if this convective phenomena is not taken into account. I mean, if it ceases, okay? But this has to be with some nonlinear feedback that have to be in the system. So that part I can't really comment more because I don't know very well all this because the feedbacks have to do a lot of it with temperatures and mass of water that evaporates, but also composition and then you have influence if you try to, if you have here artificially introduces some agriculture or savannas. This also changes the albedo, okay, the reflection in the region of the light, and it has all. This has some mesoscale importance. But well, that's that. But so this could be eventually could be an alternative stable states. So in climate science, which I'm not a climatologist or a climate scientist. But in climate science, there's a lot of things about tipping points, okay? So, and of networks also. Right? So people that there are certain systems that seems to be of paramount importance for the climate. Okay? For instance, the Amazonian region is one. Okay? But you have also, for instance, in the northern part of Siberia, the permafrost. Permafrost is permanent frost, and it is there, and it contains a lot of chemical elements. Right? So if you just go there and it starts to decline the height of the permafrost sheet could liberate gases, and there are some of them that are climate have effects on climate in general. It could be greenhouse effects due to this. And then there are others important ecosystems, and they are connected to global. In this case, it's not mesoscale, global circulation of oceans and of atmosphere, which are also coupled, ocean and atmosphere. And this could, so people do a lot of work with this, and the kind of work that usually the people do is running enormous atmospheric ocean coupled models. It's not something that you say, okay, let us call my students, my friends, collaborators, let us write a model. It's not like that. That's a big thing. It's like you need thousands of people working on that, and that people that spend, I mean, a long time of their academic career just calibrating the things. Okay, so there are kind of, I think, 5 or 6 in the world. Okay? And so these people go and run these big models, and there are lots of hypotheses also. Okay, so this is an area where we really need sensitivity analysis. But I mean, the people from the Intergovernment Panel of Climate Change, IPCC, if you look at their technical reports that come out from time to time, it's very impressive, the work they do. Very impressive. I mean, it's really taken very seriously to see if what we see could be explained by other mechanisms that were not in their models. And then they have also a convergence of models. You have different hypotheses. Do the models converge? Okay, so this is very serious. But so this is one way of doing. Okay? But this is a way that escapes us from the possibility to have this more qualitative reason that we can do, for instance, even for ecological communities. You don't go and try to simulate the whole community all the time. You have the networks of mutualisms, the networks of this and that. Then you have kind of these network structures, and then you study the network structures and so on. But in climate change studies, it's not so much. There are people that, obviously physicists, that try to simplify these big models and say, okay, there are this kind of keystones places which have an overwhelming effect on the climate circulation, and then I have a network of 20 or 30 things. Okay, and then I can study this network. Right? So I don't know. This is very recent things. I don't know what the result is. Okay, and this is. But yeah, all of this usually points to the possibility of tipping points. Okay? So the permafrost story is there is. I can't remember what is stored in permafrost. There's one greenhouse gas that's very important. Methane. Okay, so yeah, okay. This could go to the atmosphere, and this has a very, very strong effect, more than the usual greenhouse effect from carbon. And so this is. This could be a tipping point. Why is it a tipping point? Because ice and water have a not a tipping point, but it's a sharp transition of a phase transition in the well studied, a phase transition between liquid water and solid, right? But so there's a it's not a tipping point, but there is there is a special point, which is you have more and more water and less ice. Right? So it's come from a phase an ultimate thing is a phase transition, but from ice to liquid water. Okay? So that could be, and then this has an effect that could scale globally. This would be also something. So, okay. Some comments on this? Yeah, some doubts or whatever? Comments? No?
Professor, I just want to ask you, who was the first author to build the water biomass model that you presented?
This one is it's a guy called Klaus Meyer, I think. I have to go close my. And very, vocal person in this area is Ritkert. I think it's right. Okay. Which this guy is a very important scientist of dynamics of vegetation. Okay, so for instance, the studies with I mentioned at the end of the last class, there are studies with have the early warning signals of catastrophic transitions. With vegetation cover, it's the pattern of vegetation. So that comes from this guy. Okay. Okay, something else? Okay, so I have a challenge for you. So, in UK, there was once a squirrel, a red one, yeah. Yeah, there was a native red squirrel. And due to somebody or somehow there was introduced a gray squirrel. So there's the red and the gray. And this introduction made the red squirrel population decline. I don't know if it got extinct or it's nearly extinct, and you have only the gray one. Right? Hypothesis, but more one fact. Okay, the red squirrel started to decline very sharply, even with very few gray squirrels. Okay, so this is an important point. So hypothesis about what this. I want you. What happened?
Maybe it could be an infection of a parasite that is really bad in the gray one and just attack the red one.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, no long discussion about this today. So what you have is you have competition between both squires. Okay, so they have overlap of niches and so on, all the thing. But then you would expect that the increase of the gray squire would be more or less like that. I mean, the increase, introduction and increase, say, of the gray one would be something connected to something similar with the exclusion of the red one. Okay, but here you don't expect something like that, which actually happens. Okay? Yeah, and it's a pathogen. So it's a pathogen that is adapted and does not do harm to the gray one, but was not adapted, no coevolution and so on, with the red one. Okay, so that's the reason. So this is what calls as is apparent competition. Yes. Yeah. There is real competition. Resource competition is also in the game, but this other effect is apparent competition. But apparent competition is not exactly through predation in this case. Okay, so whenever you have two species, for instance, and you have the increase of one debilitates the other one, and what can be always resource competition, but say it's not resource competition, then you have to have something that mediates, and if they don't compete, and the squires compete, but say other species don't, so then this had to be mediated, okay? Somehow mediated, and in this case, this is mediated by a pathogen. It's not a predator in the typical sense, okay? A predator would then you have all the how do you say, the predator-prey dynamics that we studied, and we looked for less class of no, not less than on Tuesday. We commented on apparent competition, but you see, usually you have a kind of predator-prey dynamics behind. So in this case, it's more subtle. It can be also a pathogen-mediated. And that's actually a pathogen-mediated invasion. Okay? So we don't know if without the pathogen, the gray one would maybe invade and exclude the red one. We can't know because the pathogen is there. We cannot just take it away. Okay? And but it's an example of pathogen-mediated invasion. It's the same thing can be thought about the European invasion in Americas, which well, there were also arms and killing people directly, but we know also that pathogens were very important in for the indigenous populations that did not have been exposed to the pathogens, and took to, I mean, lots of massive deaths happened to a pathogen. So the invasion is kind of mediated. Okay? There could also be a defense. Okay, so for instance, you know, Haiti. Okay, Haiti is a very complex story, but it was an island that there were lots of slaves, okay? and they came from Africa, obviously. Okay, and so they kind of coexisted with. They had a lot of immunity to yellow fever. Okay? So then Haiti says, okay, now we are independent, the first independent state. Revolution, okay. And who owned Haiti? France. And who was ruling France? Napoleon. And Napoleon said, okay, send the ships and get it back to us. Completely failed. They died of yellow fever. Most of them, I mean, at a certain point they just got out of there. Okay? It's a hell. But it is a situation where you actually, the pathogen being adapted, or the human population being adapted, in the sense that many people had already had yellow fever and milder cases, and then they get immunity and so on. And the French or European population didn't, so it could not invade in this case. So pathogens can create invasions, but can also avoid invasions. Yeah. Okay, second challenge. So there is a case of certain islands which are called California Channel Islands, which are islands that are just off the coast of the Los Angeles area. Yeah? And there were these pigs, but feral pigs, okay, not the pigs created by humans. Feral pigs. And then there were feral pigs, and then there was a native species there, okay, which has been there for a long time, which is a fox. Okay? There's a fox who lived there. Okay, well, nice place. And in the middle of the 19th century, you have these feral pigs introduced. Probably escape it from people trying to create them for commercial reasons. Okay, so they have feral pigs. Okay? So now, this implied the crash of the fox population. Okay, hypothesis. Pigs, you know, a pig. A pig. Oh. Yeah? But it's feral. It's not domesticated. It's not domesticated pig. It's in the nature. Okay. Porco. Eh? And fox, you know. Okay, fox is easier. Okay. So you have the fox and the porco, and the native species is the fox. The pig is okay. I didn't tell you all the story. Sorry, I'm important point. You have this feral pigs, but so you have Los Angeles. You have Pacific Ocean islands. Not far from Los Angeles, not far from the coast. It's important not to be far from the coast in this case. And then you have the native fox on the islands. Okay? In the middle of 19th century, you have the introduction of these pigs, feral pigs. Okay? They were not feral, but they became feral. It's like when you have the escape. Okay? And this continued in a kind of stable situation until very recently, like in the 80s or 90s. And then suddenly you have the increase of the pigs population and the almost elimination of fox population. So, speculations. There's one speculation here.
Well, since we are talking about an island, the resource is more limited than in the continent. And also these feral pigs, they look to be more best competitors than this fox. So also
Yeah, but this does not okay, competition.
Animal comportment is very different between the fox and pigs, and I think that these feral pigs, it's better to compete about the resource and reproducing a great rate than these foxes and this.
So, but okay, let's think about this. There's the opinion there, but let me say the foxes and the pigs don't have the same resources. Okay, there's overlap, but not to the point of exclusion, because they spent more than a century without being excluded.
I don't know if the pigs are prey for the fox, but if they are, maybe that's the situation that you showed us in the paradoxical, that when you have a lot of prey in one time, you get a little
So
population.
the pigs don't prey on the foxes.
Okay. So
hypothesis.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that maybe the pigs change the resources in the island by herbivory, and which may change the prey population of the foxes.
Okay, that could be, but that doesn't explain the more than 1 century coexistence.
Maybe we're missing the dynamics of the natural prey of the fox.
Sorry?
The dynamics of the natural prey of the fox. The natural, prey of the fox, maybe it was eliminated by the pigs. Maybe it is similar to the situation of the pigeons, rats, and cats, but in the situation that we can consider also that the pig could be an omnivore, and can maybe prey on small animals.
So the point would be that there should be some other species playing some importance. Okay, so that's difficult to guess, but the decline of the foxes coincides with more stable introductions of golden eagles. Okay, eagles, águias. There's one that's called golden one. So, what's the point about the golden eagle? So, okay, what's the point about the golden eagle? So, 2 eagles. So, the story goes that, well, they fly, yeah? But they don't necessarily have nests, okay? And they always kind of visited the islands historically, but did not nest, therefore they were not all the time there. But at a certain point, recently, they have been found nested. So they are established, they are now from the islands. It's not the mainland spill over to the island only and then they go back to home. Okay? They have nests there. Okay? And this is the point when you get the decline. Yeah, the mic. Okay. Sorry.
I think that in some way, in this community model, the prey number of the fox were reduced, and this caused the reduced number of the predator in case.
Okay,
of
so
fox.
you'd say that
So-
the resource from the foxes would be diminished,
Yeah.
and how does the eagle come into this
Well,
play?
the pigs, they compete with the prey of the foxes, and this causes a reduction of the prey numbers. And the eagles, in some way, I don't know how, but
Yeah, that's the point.
also affect the number of the prey of the fox.
Yeah, okay, so you could have that the eagles affect the. But what do actually eagles eat? Okay, so.
Okay, I would say, I don't know if it's right, maybe really wrong, but like the golden eagle, like it's important from the islands because like it flies, so it can like, it like changes the resources from the island and the continent.
There are exchanges, yes.
Yeah.
But they historically already existed. The point is that they are now nesting.
And like the pigs may like, I don't know, end up like, it's like a prey. I don't know, it's like, they might be like a prey for the others, and like they made the island environment like really good for the eagles, so they don't have to go to the continent. Then they just stay in the island.
This
And like the eagles prey from like the rats, which I believe, I don't know if it's right, that foxes also prey. So I believe there's like a competition, and the eagles like beats the fox.
This could be. The eagles could deplete the resources, and pigs are better to survive. But actually, it isn't this. Okay, it could be, but isn't. Huh? Yeah. You back there.
Well, maybe the
Where? Oops.
here.
Oh, you.
Don't know the eagles got to established in the island because I don't know, they start to prey on the babies, the baby pigs, and then the population increased, and eventually they start to hunt other things and things that maybe the fox would eat, and then the fox population crashes.
Could be so. The eagles could eat the piglets, the small piglets. That it's your time and then your time.
Yeah, so I think the key is that the pigs are omnivores, right? They can eat anything. And birds of prey, they are not. They are necessarily carnivorous, and also foxes, if I'm not mistaken. So the introduction of the arrival of the eagles, they started predating all of the smaller animals, not only birds, but also mice, as Mia said. And then at some point, they depleted the resources. And the competition dynamics is between the foxes and the eagles, and the pigs are just there taking advantage of everything else there is left after they finished. I think
that could be, but actually the study there's a well-designed study that had, it is not this. You can go on field and see if it has something to do with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe the predation or the competition between the eagles and foxes and the island environment could have led to a intra-guild predation case.
So Yeah, you could think that intragill predation would be no, intragill predation maybe not. The eagles and the foxes, but no. So let me give another aspect. So because the decay, and so people went there, okay, so there's observation, long time observation, very well studied, and when you have a resource competition, what do you expect from the weaker competitor is usually that there's decline in birth rate, okay, sometimes also shorter lifespan, okay? But what was observed were carcasses of foxes, carcasses, okay? Not the decline is not the usual thing that you have when you have competition.
I'm thinking about that the eagles may affect the prey geographic distribution of the prey in this island, and then the foxes didn't find the prey, and like you say, dead, and the searchers find the carcasses of the.
It's not that, but okay. So you and then you and then you. Okay. No, you and no one. You. Okay.
I don't know if the pigs can eat like the eggs of the eggs. If the pig can eat the eggs of the eagle, but it maybe could be another resource that will increase the pig population.
Yeah, but I mean the eagles are just 10 eagles.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's not very big island.
I think that there may be actually a competition between the pigs and foxes for space. So it would mean that maybe they are more exposed to open spaces, and actually foxes can be preyed by eagles.
Yeah.
Well, because of the difference in sizes.
So, yeah, okay.
So it means that pigs are going to occupy the spaces that foxes need to live, to dwell, to sleep.
Yeah, okay.
Has to do with this, maybe.
That's an important point. That just you, and then I will give you some more.
Maybe what happens is that the eagles start to eat the pigs, but so they found a way of food, like a normal way of food, they established in the island. After that, maybe the pigs are too big for the eagles, so the other prey could be the foxes, and the foxes start competing and are being predated by the eagles. So it's like a hyperpredation, like too much things bad for the foxes or something like that.
So okay, we have now an element that is important. That okay, so eagles they prey on the what's called piglets, the babies, okay, and they prey also on the foxes, okay, and foxes and the eagle, golden eagle, visited the island only intermittently, okay? So this foxes actually had no natural defense, like being awareness of danger that some species have. Then they see something and they they don't. Okay, so they are also preyed. So both of them are preyed. So this is in principle apparent competition. Okay, but this is so then okay. So this has been going on with equilibrium for more than 100 years. Okay, so pigs and there are only some eagles coming. At a certain point, the eagles come and establish themselves there, and then the strength of the apparent competition is stronger. Right. So if you have more eagles all the time, they have more competition. Okay, if you only have sometimes some eagles, this modulus of apparent competition is not. I mean, it's not very it's a kind of weak interaction because they come once a year or something. Okay, so they are not established. But once they establish, they will continuously prey and on the pigs and on the foxes, on the babies. Okay? So this is apparent competition. Okay? But now, why didn't why didn't they invade before? There's a certain point that they invade in nests. Nested invasions. They establish themselves there. Why? Here's somebody with a hypothesis here. So, yeah, here.
I don't know if they used to nest on the continent, but maybe the human population on the coast, like, devastated the habitat of the eagle, and then the eagle started moving to the island to nest.
This could be, actually, there is something connected to human populations, but actually it's not that they are just fleeing the human population. It's not that only. Okay, you would say the same thing. But okay, so first, nobody asked if this island is isolated, if it has a human population or not. But there's been farming going on, okay? Also, so what farming brings? It brings also pollution on water, but water doesn't have anything to do with this system, okay? The foxes and so on. So what happened also is that there were another eagle, the bald eagle, which is native to the island, and it doesn't prey pigs and it doesn't prey foxes. It's essentially connected to aquatic life, preying on big fish and so on. So completely different raptor. And so if they needed fish populations decline with pollution. But there's another fact. This other eagle is territorial. So it attacks other species, other eagles, to protect his territory. But if you have pollution and the decline of fish or changes in the community of fishes, this can lead to the bald eagle having to go somewhere else, okay? So it's excluded. So this guy was kind of people that is in front of the island saying, golden eagle, you are not, you can't enter because it's attacked. It's going away. And then it's gone away, then the golden eagle can enter, okay? And this has to be with a human with human intervention, due to farming, and also due to human modifications of the habitat. It is also true that there are less places where the fox usually hides. Okay. So it is more susceptible to predation. This was correct. But it's the point is that this is human action that actually modifies the environment, and then there are more open places, and open places is where the golden eagle is happy. Okay? So there's apparent competition, but there are a lot of other things. Okay, so this is a very well studied situation. It's kind of, because it's an island, it's not very long, very big, and so on, and not many species involved. So that's an example of apparent competition, but with particularities. Yeah. Okay, I think that's all today, and unless you have some more questions about anything you want to ask. Okay. So, next week we will change our topics. We'll go for epidemiology.